So, anyway, tonight we really are excited to have our speaker, who I will introduce in just a moment. I just want to tell one quick update on the certification of the signatures for the abortion amendment. We had plenty, so we've counted them. But now we're waiting to have the Secretary of State certify them. More than likely, I think the date was August 9th to be on the election for November. He's going to play games. We do know that the ACLU has every scenario they could think of ready to go. And the court will do a fast track decision. So we know this isn't going to happen fast. So I just wanted to let you know that's the latest we know so far. So, okay, I'm going to, next I'm going to introduce Kathy Merrick, who's going to give announcements. And that's what she's going to do.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Kathy Merrick. I'm the membership chairperson for Chesterfield Township Democrats, and I want to thank you, first of all, as you all signed in. I saw everyone is already a member, and I thank you. I thank you because you know that our dues are our only source of income, and we're putting it to good use this year. I wanted to remind you also, we are not having a July Chesterfield Township Democrat meeting. We'll be back. Our next regular meeting will be here on Tuesday, August 27th. So a couple of important things are happening before that. As you know, the primary is Tuesday, August 6th, which is only, I believe, 6 weeks from today. And that means that absentee voting started today. And I have information about it. I printed out some information if anyone would like to know more about how you request a ballot or what the valid reasons are, et cetera, et cetera. But if you'd like it, I'm going to put them just right here on the chair. We'll pass them around if you'd like one. And the other important thing that's happening is we are continuing, despite the fact that the the cleanup program for Missouri roads has been discontinued, or St. Louis County it is, I believe. Anyway, it has been formally discontinued, but they are allowing people who already are doing it to continue until early 2026. So our next Clarkson Road cleanup will be Saturday, August 3rd at 10 a.m. most likely because of 9 a.m. because of the heat, sorry. So please come and join us at the corner of Baxter and Clarkson in the office building that's like catty corner from Deerberg's. And at 9 a.m., it's, as I always say, it's more of a social event than a work event. We clean up 1 mile of road, just picking up trash down the road, and we're through within the hour. So we'd love to see you. And thank you. I think that's it. I'll also pass around the sign up for the Clarkson Road cleanup. Thank you all.
And real quick, I want to recognize we've got two candidates here. Connie Steinmetz is running in the 87th, and she always comes often, so we like to see that. And we have a new candidate here, Josh Sexton. He's running in Wildwood, number 110. Thank goodness. We got somebody to run, so thank you for doing that. Okay, now we're ready for the main event. Dr. L.J. Punch is a trauma surgeon, aspiring healer.
I've got one.
We have one. Aspiring healer.
You want this one?
Yeah, for questions. Aspiring healer, where was I? Sorry. An executive director of Power for St. Louis, a community of health working to reduce the impact of trauma in the St. Louis region. This includes the work of the bullet-related injury clinic called BRIC and the T like Tom, a holistic harm reduction program that focuses on overdose risk while centering the experience of Black masculine-bodied people because Black pain matters. Thank you, Dr. Punch, for coming in your busy schedule, and you are on.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I just want to get one prop ready here. Okay, so yes, I'm Dr. L.J. Punch, and hi, Kevin. And Kevin is my friend. I really appreciate the chance to come and share with you all some of the work. I am a trauma surgeon by training, and I now do community health full-time, including 2 programs that you just heard about. One, the BRIC, and the other, the T, but they really work together to address trauma. As a trauma surgeon, I saw for years the devastating impacts that trauma has on people's bodies, but I started to become more and more concerned about the long, enduring effects on their lives. And so I now practice trauma care full-time. And I think I was invited here today in part because there is a major concern across the region around a term that is frequently called gun violence. And I'm going to start with a punchline. Gun violence is not a public health problem or crisis, but bullet-related injury is. So I'm hopefully going to present to you some compelling stories and data that help you think about this problem in a way that I think is transformative for our region. So again, thank you for the invitation. I'll start with 2 stories. One was Jeff. Jeff heard a knock at the door, and he went to answer, opening it up just a crack, not expecting anyone, when he suddenly heard a tiny explosion near his ear and felt immediate pain in his neck. He called out for his wife, but she did not answer back. He turned around to see her lying there just beyond the door. Her life ended, and not just her life ended, but the life of their unborn child, as the bullet that went past him, only grazing his neck, went into her chest and ended her life immediately. That care that he then received, or the care that he then received, was provided in an emergency department where he got a Band-Aid and a pat on the hand, and was immediately sent right back to home with nothing else to address what he had just endured, because he had a minor injury. Another person, John, was driving home from work, pulling up where he would do every day when several people approached his car and literally flooded it with bullets. One bullet entered his arm and lodged inside his shoulder blade. He also went to an emergency room for care and was seen briefly, told he had a fracture that didn't need surgery, was given a Band-Aid and a pocket full of Percocet and sent home, only to return to a family where his wife and daughter had heard the bullets enter the car and him, and every night relive that moment, again, without anything else to care for them or their family. Both of these stories are real. They're both people that I've taken care of, and they're emblematic of our approach to what I call bullet-related injury. And I'm going to share with you a little bit of how I went from the term gun violence to the term bullet-related injury and why it matters so much. As a trauma surgeon, I trained to be a trauma surgeon in Baltimore. I went to the University of Maryland after med school, and Baltimore is a city incredibly similar to St. Louis, all the way down to the division between the city and county line, as well as the south side, east side being bordered by water. It's really quite remarkably similar. And also is a place where there's a very high per capita rate of loss of life due to bullets. I took those experiences as a resident and came to St. Louis, where I practiced as faculty at WashU for many years, watching day after day gun violence, as I used to call it, take the lives of many, but impact the lives of many more. And there's some incredible statistics that I learned as I started to get more and more curious about what happened to people after they left the trauma center. And here are some things that I think most people have no idea is really going on. If you look nationwide at everybody who is shot, the overwhelming majority do survive. It's between 90 to as high as 97%, depending on the setting. Of those folks that survive, 70% are sent home from the emergency room without being admitted. So they are immediately right back into whatever environment, whatever resource, whatever home, whatever circumstance, whatever trauma impacted their life at that moment. They are frequently told to follow up as needed, come back in 2 weeks maybe, but who will see them? Sometimes their injuries are minor enough that they won't even be evaluated by a surgeon. They'll only be seen by an emergency medicine doctor. Does the emergency medicine doctor have a clinic? Is there somebody there to see them in the days after, when actually the natural progression of the bullet injury is to get much more painful due to inflammation? I've had patients say, yeah, it didn't hurt that much when it first happened, and then 2 days ago I woke up and it was terrible. That's normal. So the overwhelming majority of care is care that people have to give themselves. The thing is, that same bullet injury is associated with the 7 to 30 times higher risk of future and fatal bullet injury. Meaning, one of the worst, biggest risk factors for being shot is having been shot before. But we so frequently leave people without resource and without assistance in that situation. Bullets break trust. Their ability to move through the air with life-threatening force at the speed or faster than the speed of sound makes them a very, very different kind of vector of trauma. They're not like punching somebody. They're not like somebody calling somebody a bad name. They're not like the kind of trauma that happens in a car. They can transmit particularly virulently. They're very good at exchanging harm. And they do it fast, namelessly, intensely. But the thing is, bullets also are more likely to harm you by you putting it in yourself than someone else putting it into you. Because the truth is, injuries that are self-inflicted are twice as frequent as ones that are inflicted from others. That makes the whole language around gun violence really problematic, because those self-inflicted injuries are frequently not intended, and if they are intended, as horrific as they can be, they really don't fit inside the concept of violence. And so there's a whole lot of injuries and a whole lot of broken trust that comes because of the power of a bullet to move through the air and take life. But it's very clunky the way we talk about it in medicine. The CDC categorizes injuries or deaths related to bullets in 4 different ways: homicide, suicide, self-inflicted, and law enforcement related. Law enforcement related bullet injuries have a completely separate category in the CDC. And while I appreciate those 4 intents are very different intents, right? The injury inside the patient is exactly the same. As a trauma surgeon, I've never seen the gun that hurt ever any of my patients, but I've taken out more bullets than I care to think about. And I started realizing as I was working through this that people have radically different responses to the broken trust of bullets. People who are gun negative tend to say, I don't want a gun in my home, I don't want to be around brown guns, I don't want anything to do with them, we should make them go away. People who are gun positive, who've had affirming experiences of guns in their home, in their family, in the culture of the people around them, will have the exact opposite experience. So for me as a doctor, I had to figure out how I could meet each of my patients exactly where they were at, without worrying about their attitudes toward gun ownership, and getting instead really clear about what bullets were potentially and actively doing to their bodies. In that way, I had to make myself trustable because of the way that bullets so frequently cause a polarizing response. Just to amplify how much of a lack of clinical care, this is not touchy-feely care. This is not being nice, this is not mental health. I'm talking, you got a hole in your body and you have to manage the pain and the consequences. There's a tremendous lack. I have been in places and cities in this country that just don't provide any care at all. I've seen, even in St. Louis, people coming into the emergency department with toilet paper on their wounds because they can't afford gauze and there's nowhere for them to get support. Can't emphasize enough to you just how little support there is for injuries that are seemingly mild. And what do I mean by mild? I mean any injury from a bullet where somebody doesn't need an operation or an observation for serious bleeding or organ failure. See, the thing is though, it's not just when people are physically injured. there is also another sort of rim of injury, and that's when people are threatened by a bullet. For instance, all the children in the CVPA shooting in 2022, the school downtown, the Performing Arts School. Even though, God bless, only a few people were injured physically, the entire school and staff demonstrated what I now call bullet-related injury. It's this constellation of broken trust and the inability to feel that your body, other people, your home, and spaces are safe. And it creates tremendous long-term consequences. So it's not just that there's not a home for people who are physically injured, there's not a home for people who are psychologically and emotionally injured. And here's the one that usually surprises people most of all. Unlike it's frequently documented in popular media, TV, when someone has a bullet inside their body, it's generally left inside their body. It's not taken out. So unless somebody has a reason to get an operation emergently to control a broken bone, a broken blood vessel, or a broken organ, there is no operation usually offered to them up front. This comes from pre-Civil War medicine, at a time before aseptic technique, when it really was a bad idea to go fishing after bullets because we didn't have penicillin or soap when it came to surgery. But this is not the case in modern practice, and yet I have been to conferences where surgeons are using the same logic to justify leaving bullets inside people's bodies. In my practice, before, when I was on the inside of a trauma center, I used to tell people, don't worry about it, it won't move, it's not going to harm you. But when I started doing the research and looking at the science behind it, I found there was a total paucity of any real critical research and understanding of the long-term consequences of having a bullet inside your body. But there was some evidence that would show it's associated with higher rates of depression, higher rates of recurrent injury, and generally a source of post-traumatic stress disorder. This creates a unique experience in the bodies of Black men, where for decades, bullets have been the leading cause of death. But it's not just now an issue for Black men, and not just an issue for cities. It's an issue that is reaching to the lives of children, as bullets have now become the leading cause of death in children as well. That is an incredibly sobering statistic. I don't know that we can really wrap our minds around it, but for someone aged 1 to 18, the number one reason why their life is going to end is a bullet, period. That is the case in our country, as bullets have now overtaken motor vehicle collisions as a source of death. Now, we're out of Chesterfield or Manchester, I'm not exactly sure where I am, but it's far from home. West County, it is beautiful. I've been out here a few times before, but the bottom line is, you might think, well, what's it got to do with me? What does that have to do with us? It has everything. There was a recent effort that's been spearheaded by East-West Gateway. Do y'all know what East-West Gateway is? It's a regional effort, collaborative between the St. Clair County and pretty much everywhere around, from St. Anne to maybe not as far as Joplin, but it's far, right? And it's basically saying, what can we as a region do to collaborate around issues like safety and transportation? Well, they recently held a series of convenings around the issue of community violence, and specifically around the issue of homicide. And this is some data. I don't know if it's projecting. Yeah, it's kind of projecting. You can see the city-county lines and in the areas around where frequently the issue of homicide is thought to be a St. Louis City problem. But the truth is, about half of the region's homicides happen in the city, and the other half happen in the surrounding counties. But here's the really tricky part, that if you look at all of the homicides in the city, at least a third of them involve somebody from the surrounding county. It truly is a regional issue, and it needs a regional response. But unfortunately, because of, for instance, how our policing departments work, the way our hospital systems work, and the way our public health systems work, there's not a collaboration, certainly not across the river, to create a system of care and a system of prevention that works together. So it just so happens that today, like today, like this morning, right? I did not plan this. The Surgeon General broke the silence of the medical community on this issue and has officially declared today, as I said, a similar thing that the Surgeon General's office declared in 1964 when there was an official warning that went out on cigarettes. 1964 was the warning, 1965 was the label on the packets. Well, 60 years later, a leading cause of death has now officially gotten some guidance from the Surgeon General that this is a public health problem, and I'll share these slides with you so you can look up the report. There was a really, really good article in Kaiser Health breaking it down. But this page from the report is the one that I found the most compelling. Because on this report, there is not just a discussion of the people who die. That's the red dot at the top of all the bullets. That's what we think about, and it's really intense and really important, and as I've already said, a regional issue. It's all the other people. Around 48,000 people lost their lives in the United States last year due to bullets, but it's estimated well over 100, and maybe as many as 150,000 people survived bullet injuries nationwide. And it's not just the people who survive, it's the people who were the witnesses, like the wife and the child inside the home who heard the sound of the shot that entered their father and husband. It's the one who lose their loved ones, like the man who had a graze but lost his wife and unborn child. It's the people around in the community who grieve along with them, and it's the fear of the children going to school having to know how to go underneath their desk rather than sit and get through the day. Now, the thing is, this is exceptionally real. I just told you multiple stories of how much I'm observing it, but the language makes it so it becomes a partisan issue on something that should be crystal clear. Because I don't care what kind of room I'm in, whether it's the Chesterfield Republicans, the Chesterfield Independents, or the Chesterfield Democrats. I'm going to look at people's eyes, and they're going to agree with me. We do not want holes in people's bodies. That's it. I mean, this is universal. I haven't found a human being that disagrees with me yet on this, right? And yet, the language is a problem. Now, let's just break this down, if I can, for a second. You might be like, what's the problem? The language, I don't get it. What is the issue with gun violence? What is gun violence? Now, this is a term that sometimes people will use argumentatively. Guns don't kill guns, guns don't kill people kill people, right? As a dismission of, or being dismissive of the argument, but it's actually quite logical. Because a gun is an inert thing. And violence is an act between two people that happens in many, many different circumstances. Whenever we make an inert object, or like a gun that has dependent on human behavior, not the thing itself, or an action, the problem, meaning we're saying that we need to change our relationship or our interactions with each other. This is the primary problem. And say it's a public health problem, we lose the power of public health itself. Because when we make people be the problem, the only answer to the problem is to confine and control people's behavior. For instance, let's think about seatbelts. You remember a time before seatbelts, right? What did the car industry try to do? You're a bad driver. That's the reason why people are dying on the road, so you just need to drive better. What's that sound like? Right? We have done this before, and we know it doesn't work. But it's actually even worse than that. In 1968, Lyndon B. Johnson passed the Gun Control Act, and it was after 3 major losses: JFK, RFK, and MLK. Now, can you imagine what that man was going through in office? To have those 3 men die from the bullet while he was vice president and president. Unbelievable loss, unbelievable grief in Trump. And he passed one of the most intense gun control legislative acts in 1968 that had been passed for decades. And basically, he named criminality, insanity, and addiction as the 3 characteristics that should bar people from being able to own guns. And he also got rid of selling guns through the mail. But he focused on the identity of the people rather than the tenacity of bullets to take lives. It would sort of like be saying people who are criminals and people who are insane and people who are addicts shouldn't be able to drive a car. And forgetting the seatbelts, the street signs, the speed limits, and the airbags. It just doesn't make public health sense. But the thing is, that focus on behavior and individual characteristics continued and continued until groups like the NRA and gun lobby said, wait a minute, you can't take away our rights based on characteristics that you have deemed. And actually we set up this unbelievable storm of constant argument and polarization without creating the tools of public health to make it so there were less holes in people's minds. Now, this is not a conversation that, I feel like we're having. I feel like the public discourse is, I'm gun positive, I'm gun negative, I don't need to talk to you, we can't possibly agree. And I think it's actually allowed this public health concern to now get completely out of control, where our children are being affected the most intensely. So, I want to introduce a new framework that I have created along with an incredible collaborative group of people in the St. Louis region to use the tools of science and the tools of public health to better describe what it is that bullets do to our bodies. I want to explain why this new name allows for a new narrative and a new set of tools. This public health framework allows for a different kind of science, how it has allowed us to create holistic care and a set of practice standards. So, what is bullet-related injury? It is the physical, emotional, social, and spiritual impact of a bullet, whether you or someone you love has been wounded, threatened, or lost due to a bullet. This is a definition that better describes the injury, because the injury is the issue. For instance, HIV injures the human immune system and creates a syndrome. I think bullets injure the soul, and the body, and the heart, and the mind. And in doing that, create a situation in which people cannot trust. It makes it extremely hard to get care to people. It makes it extremely hard for people to ever feel like they can be safe again. And it's the reason why bullet-related injury is one of its own worst risk factors. Because the same thing, like I said, that might have someone put a gun down might make somebody else pick 4 more up. And that is why we need a better framework. In this framework, gun violence is a mode of transmitting bullet-related injury. Similar to the way that, let's say it, real talk. IV drug use is a way of transmitting HIV. But we're not getting rid of all substances, and we're not getting rid of sex, and we have learned to deal with HIV. We have not gotten rid of cars, and we've learned to make driving safer. I think there is a way, if we understood bullets better, that we could live amongst them safer and actually reduce the times that they create harm. So what are the ways that we break it down? One is other inflicted injury. So an other inflicted injury can happen in a domestic setting, in a community setting, within a home, unintentionally, or institutionally, meaning like inside a school or inside an engagement with law enforcement. Self-inflicted injuries can be intentional or unintentional. I have an elderly gentleman who's in our group, amongst our patients, and he had armed himself. He had had shoulder surgery. He felt very vulnerable. He was in a lot of different places where he felt like he couldn't protect himself, so he had started carrying a gun, and he had it in his gym bag. And he was at the YMCA doing his swim rehab for his shoulder surgery, and he dropped his bag, and the gun went off and shot him, and there was a child standing right beside him in the YMCA. The grief that this man had, not for his own injury, but the thought that in trying to protect himself, he could have hurt a child. It was months and months and months of therapy just to get him to the point where he did not walk around in that immense guilt and shame. self-inflicted injuries are hidden and deeply shameful for people, especially when they're not intended. And then there's virtual bullet-related injury. Every time the news creates this scary story about how unsafe our communities are, every time in film there's this totally unrealistic setting in which the good guys shoot everybody with one shot dead, right? And the bad guys fall down like they're stormtroopers, like just out. And it's just totally not what actually happens. And there's also just games and day-to-day life, like even cartoons. It's incredible how much we've normalized the presence of bullets. That allows the bullets to be present, allows them to be in our hearts and in our minds, it allows us to be desensitized to them. And I think it has a lot to do with how they spread inside our lives to other people and how they spread to in our communities. Now here's the thing. I just told you this is the leading cause of death in black men and children. It's the second leading cause of death in many other demographic groups. Uh-oh, I'm getting staticky. Let's see how. Okay, so so the thing is, despite that, I don't know, it's gonna work. So the thing is, if I came in and I'm in a scenario where I have a bullet injury, you know what we call it in the hospital? We call it a gunshot wound. And that refers to the wound on the outside of the body. It doesn't refer to what happens internally. It doesn't refer to the long-standing consequences of the injury. It certainly doesn't describe what happens in my family as they watch me. And it certainly doesn't describe what happens in the community. But this is really important. If you go to those same CDC books and you look up things like E. coli infection, you will get to the genetic strain, like exact DNA sequence information about that strain, what it did, how it impacted people, and who died from it. And yet, you have these clunky homicide, suicide, unintentional law enforcement, and that's it. There's no nuance, there's no data, there's no information, because we're not asking the question, because we have the language wrong. So, to put it bluntly, we're not able to reduce the harm of firearms, which is a mechanism that is core to public health. So the BRIC is an answer to all of that. As a trauma surgeon, I saw these issues over and over and over and over again present, and I created a clinic that would create a medical home for the experience of bullet-related injury. I launched the clinic in the first year of the pandemic, a time when emergency rooms were overwhelmed and bullet injuries were skyrocketing. And it's based around making a home for these two men and people like them who have seemingly minor or non-operative injuries and will be sent home from the emergency department, but have a whole lifetime of recovery in front of them. The focus of the BRIC is to unbreak that broken trust. Now, what do I mean by that? If you're on a bike and you fall and you break your femur, right? What does the orthopedic surgeon do? Does the orthopedic surgeon heal your femur? No. They unbreak it. You are the one that has to heal it by how you eat and how you manage your body and how you rest and the vitamins you take and the love that you have around you so you can heal well. The unbreaking is what we do at the BRIC. The healing is what people do with the tools and the resources we give them to get well. It begins by giving people one of these in the emergency department, a BRIC box. Because the truth is, when people leave after they've been injured, no matter who they are, no matter where they are, they're unlikely to get a comprehensive set of supplies to care for their bodies. Maybe a nurse will slip them some gauze in the patient belonging bag, but it's not a system, right? And then they're going to Walgreens or CVS in the middle of the night trying to figure out how to, cover their wounds, paying $4 for one piece of gauze. I mean, it's terrible, right? Right at a time when you are terrified that the world is not safe, you have to go out in public and try to decipher what you need to heal your body because you've suddenly become a military nurse, right? And it's really, really stressful. So the box includes not just the supplies, but also an invitation to come to the BRIC and a way of managing the pain. We stage injuries. We get scientific. We use the tools of public health, and we talk about injuries based on the patient's experience. How deep did the bullet go, and is there a bullet left behind or not? Because it turns out, when you start talking to people, that leftover bullet that the hospital said was no big deal is really, really, really important to patients. We have a tool for assessing how much the trauma of bullet injuries is showing up in people's day-to-day lives, not using language of PTSD, which is sometimes very traumatizing and re-triggering, but just meeting people where they're at and asking them about their day-to-day. Can you eat? Can you sleep? Can you move? Can you think? And then giving people real tools and resources to be able to support their day-to-day life so they can do all of those things better. This is an ultrasound of a bullet that's just an inch under the skin. That's actually very easy to take out and through a very small procedure. Patients are told that they don't need this out, even though every single day they wake up and feel it under their skin. But we also think it's slowly leaching lead into their bodies and can be a source of local and systemic lead toxicity. We're checking lead levels on people now, a standard of care that's not even established in medical practice, and finding shockingly elevated levels of lead. And also when we remove bullets, we're seeing staining, this sort of dark staining that's clearly in corrosion of the bullets, as if the copper and lead inside them is actively being deposited into the tissues. Really, really easy thing to fix, really, really unnecessary for people to continue. That's an example of a bullet and what it looked like under the skin after we took it out. We take care of kids and have dedicated play therapists as well as child care so that if a kid has been injured, they can get care, or if they're the child of a loved one, they can get care, or that the loved one can come and get care while they have their kid with them. And I will tell you, kids heal fast on the outside, but it's so much more investment for a child, even just to begin to undo what it is to see or hear a parent be injured, and certainly to be injured themselves. One of the things that was really shocking to me is to see children being given opioids for their pain management. Early on, embedding a practice which is horribly dangerous for their lifetime of pain experiences. We practice a multimodal, non-opioid way of managing pain that includes a lot of different natural and herbal remedies, and is much more inviting and welcoming to patients and families alike. And we encourage people to bring their families with them and have space for them at the clinic. We've been working with the Michael Brown Jr. Foundation to get better at supporting people who are in grief and loss, including hosting monthly talk sessions, healing circles, and we have chaplains embedded in our care as well as trauma therapists, and we do wellness boxes to help people, again, heal themselves and make practices of care. We've also worked with schools who are dealing with the impact of school shootings to do remembrance days. The BRIC was set up as a pilot that in the first year hoped to reach 100 people. In the first 10 months, we reached 140, and we haven't looked back yet. Now reaching over 650 folks, more than 3,000 visits, and doing it in a way that's exceptionally cost effective. Interestingly, since the spike in 2020, the homicide rate has gone down for the region, and so has the non-fatal shootings. But the BRICS visits are going up because people are coming to deal and heal with that deep, deep trauma. We're also providing services for people who have distant injuries or people who did undergo surgery and were admitted to the hospital. We've broadened our inclusion, and we're basically saying if you have a bullet in your body, we want to care for you. And one gentleman, this is not actually him, but in particular, came to us all the way from Shiloh, Illinois. He had been shot at his brother's lake by some intruders that were on the property. When he asked them to leave, they shot them. And the fact that he had to drive, significant distance because there was nobody in the system on the east side of the river who could help him manage his wound and his pain, which is astonishing. In other words, by not tending to the issue, nobody is getting the care they need. So the BRIC is located down in the Del Mar Divine, which is the old St. Luke's Hospital on Del Mar Boulevard. It's a beautiful building and a beautiful project. We're able to provide comprehensive care with a very wide range of folks, and now people can even refer themselves to the BRIC. Since June of 2023, we have completely exceeded all expectations We had hoped to see at least the Black Line is 100 visits, and now we're well over double that every month, with more and more people wanting to come and get healed, seeing news stories, hearing about it from friends, and deciding that today is the day that they're going to get well. So the bullet-related injury clinic and the bullet-related injury concept to me is a less threatening, less polarizing, more scientific, and more engaging way to talk about the issue that's plaguing our region of gun violence. And I just wanted to come and share this concept with you today because more and more people need to know. They need to know about the care that's not happening. People are pounding, wanting change and wanting the downtown to be safer, and then letting hundreds and thousands of people be impacted with no care, knowing that they're at the highest risk to be right back in the same situation again. But even more than that, that anybody who is shot is not getting access to the care they need unless their care is really, really intense. It's almost like we're penalizing people for surviving or having minor injuries, and that's not right. Bullet-related injury is a better way of talking about the problem that goes away from criminalizing people and more focuses on the injuries that people have. We want the care to be holistic and accessible, and we're doing that at the BRIC. We want to create mind, body, and soul care for the wounds that we can see, but also for the wounds that can't be seen. And we want to do that in a way that prevents future bullet-related injury. The BRIC is here for the community. We take referrals far and wide, and we have now launched a version of the BRIC in Memphis and Hartford, Connecticut, where we're distributing these boxes and giving virtual support. And we're in discussion with Baltimore, Atlanta, Denver, Buffalo, and a few other cities. And next fall, we will be hosting something called BRIC Institute, where we welcome the state, the region, and the country, and the country to come and learn about this medicine because it really has been transformative. That's BRIC Institute, November 7th to 9th. So every bullet really does leave a mark, and I appreciate your time in helping us heal those wounds because all bullet-related injuries can be healed. So appreciate you, happy to take questions, and thank you so much again.
Originally, I wanted to be able to walk around with the extra microphone, but we can't. So if you could speak clearly,
And I'll repeat the
Dr.
question.
Punch will try to repeat the question. And since I'm up here, I thought I might as well ask
Yeah,
that.
okay,
Two things. First of all, how on earth can you change the political climate for policy, the big picture, macro picture, so that this is adopted better? I can see you're already doing some of that work by going to different cities. And secondly, if you would care to comment on the kid that opened up fire as a prank. I don't know how old he was, but is that something that's like the canary in the coal mine with our young people?
So first question is, what are we going to do to have this more widely adopted? We use the tools of scholarship, which include evaluation, research, writing. So we're currently working with the WashU Brown School Evaluation Center to look at our first 3.5 years of work so we can publish rigorously that this is real. And again, I go and I talk whenever I can. I was just at George Washington last week. I'm going to Henry Ford in a few months, Ohio State University, University of Colorado, University of Maryland. Anywhere that will have me, I'm trying to go and spread this message. But you know, the thing that's going to speak the loudest is the people. And so we're also going to we've created a patient advisory board, and we're working on gathering stories, because like the 2 stories I told, I can say whatever I want to say, but you understand that, right? And I think that advocacy and grassroots work from the patients themselves is going to be important. I also think that the current focus around community violence that comes even from the Department of Justice itself is shockingly open to healing practices. Can you imagine the Department of Justice is putting out requests for proposals in which the word healing is present? People know what we've been doing isn't working, right? And actually there's an openness to innovation and progressive healing strategies in a way that I've never seen before. I hope it continues. The other issue is, what about the kid opening fire, using a toy gun, stuff like that? Is it a canary in a coal mine? It absolutely is. And I can assure you that a child who's behaving that way has BRI. Because they've seen it, they have felt it, they've been exposed to it, they've lost somebody, they have normalized this expression of trauma and have not had the opportunity to heal. And I think because we use the clunky, inadequate language, we cannot identify it in that child, and so it can spread. Do you see my point? If this was just normal, like a COVID swab, or a blood pressure check, or a lead screen, right? Finger prick to check your lead level, then we could maybe be in a better position to do something about it. But because that's just a bad kid, a bad neighborhood, or ineffective policy, we don't actually do the work that's necessary. I actually work with a group called Crime Protection STL. They are, they run, somewhere out in the county, they run basically a shop where they sell firearms and they teach gun safety. And it's a couple, and they're just amazing. And their mantra is the best gunfight is the one that doesn't happen. Because they're like, if you want to own a gun, the first thing you need to learn is how to de-escalate. It's just a radically responsible approach to gun ownership. And they actually just did a news report about how to talk to kids about toy guns and the rules that parents should have around what it means to interact with a gun. Because there's these new water bead guns that are actually really pretty intense, and they're going to get somebody killed. And so I think if the language is only guns are bad, then we don't get anywhere. If the language is only, everybody should have unfettered access to gun ownership, we don't get anywhere. If we say bullet-related injury is a public health problem that's completely affecting everyone's quality of life, then maybe we can get somewhere and we can talk about it. So I think for that child, it's what is the frustration, what did they see, what do they understand, what is context, what are the rules, what is the understanding, and I assure you, nobody takes someone else's life with a bullet until they've been threatened that their own will be taken first. And that's where I think the work needs to be. Yes?
How are you funded?
How are we funded at the BRIC? So Power for STL is the umbrella nonprofit organization that I founded in 2018. It was a step of faith and actually just taking some consulting funds that I normally would have given charitably and distributing it instead to this effort. That has multiplied over the years through a lot of serious hustle that includes a whole lot of grant writing. Because we offer such discreet, powerful services, and because we can include healthcare, it opens us up to service contracts. But I tell you, it's hard because while people will pay us to do what we do, they won't pay us to exist as a nonprofit. We now have almost 40 employees, multiple programs. We're estimating over 2,000 encounters every month. It's a lot. And so we're trying to grow basically a charitable arm because we need to get the word out to the community so we can get a more rigorous support, and more so that we can get some sort of endowment, because when you're working on contracts, it's always we'll pay you after the fact. So you're, grant rich and cash poor all the time. It's really, really not easy. But we also are getting more and more national attention. So there's some national foundations like Every Town for Gun Safety who are supporting us, and we just for the first time put in 2 major federal grants that hopefully will also get us in sort of a different category of funding. We are very efficient. We're very efficient in the way our care is provided, and I think that also makes a difference in how much impact we can get with the dollars. Yes?
So if a police officer is shot and has a bullet in him, does that bullet get removed, or are you saying it's selective who has their bullets taken out and who
The
don't?
general practice is for bullets to not be taken out. Now, somebody can advocate for themselves, especially if they have insurance and a doctor, right? And say, I really want this out. But I've had patients go through weeks and months of desperately trying to get help, only to come for us to be able to do it, because we do actually remove bullets that are close enough to the surface in our clinic. It's really, really, really a struggle.
So it's not related to whether you have insurance or.
Well, I think it is ultimately, because for instance, let's say I'm shot, I don't have insurance, right? After I'm seen in the ER, I lose my window to get back into a clinical door unless I come back in through the ER. If I come back into the ER and I say I want my bullet out, they're like, we're not doing that. We told you that the first time, right? Because it's not like the surgeon's gonna come down right then and there, scrub up and do it, right? Now, if there's a horrible infection and it's like festering out, sometimes people will get a procedure, but I had a 19-year-old, this happened this week. A 19-year-old who was shot when he was 17. The bullet was lodged in his leg. He was cared for at a children's hospital. 2 years later, it festers out. It's a huge infection. It's driving him nuts. It hurts. And he just wants to get it out so he can get back to work. He calls the children's hospital. They say, you're not a kid anymore. We're not taking care of you. Even though they do for all kinds of other issues. He calls the adult hospital, and they're like, we're not taking it out, but you can get an ultrasound. He goes and gets an ultrasound like the one I showed you, and then nobody calls him to follow up. And the entire time, his father is desperately trying to get him care, and they have insurance. So they drove 70 miles to come to the BRIC so I could do a 10-minute procedure and get the bullet out. And brought a detective with them so that the bullet could be part of a case that's still pending. And they were like, how is it? We really didn't know what we were going to do. I'm not making this up. This is actually happening in the United States right now. 15-year-old shot in his foot, goes to a children's hospital, then gets sent home, has bleeding and pain, then goes to the adult hospital, gets sent home again, but this time gets a BRIC box and information, and then comes to my clinic. Within a week, I get him in for a procedure, and I don't just pull a bullet out from his foot, I pull out part of his shoe that had been buried inside, that was creating this horrific infection. 15-year-old went to 2 hospitals with his guardian to try and get care. They were trying. His grandmother was trying, and they couldn't get it done. And that's how serious it was. This is not theoretical. This is like news at 11, like actually happening in this region. And it's not just St. Louis. This is a practice nationwide. And I've talked to people who were shot 40 years ago who will tell you the same story, right? So we're just letting it fester. One of the things that we say at the BRIC, I don't know if this one has it, is that we need to get the lead out. We need to literally, figuratively, and psychologically get past this way of thinking and get support to people. Yes?
Are you able to cultivate volunteers through either social work or child therapy? We've got 2 great medical schools here. Do you get volunteers? Is there a program to funnel into your
So we have
services?
2 kinds of volunteers. We have volunteers who help us on volunteer nights where we like put boxes together and other kinds of things, and that's open to anybody. And we can get you I can send you that flyer. And then there's volunteers who actually go to the front line with us. Like Kevin does both, right? He comes to volunteer night and he comes out to the front line with us. We can work with people with varying different skill sets and very different capacities. I would tell you the BRIC is a very tender place, and we require a process of training, observing, because to get to a place where you can show up and people feel totally safe with you it takes some work. But we do have folks, especially pre-med students, who come and do a lot of work in the clinic. Generally, though, real talk is we hire people. You know why? Because when you hire people and you pay them for their time, they can show up in a way that's different for you and the patients. And so for the most, sort of tender clinical care, generally we're working with paid staff. But for lots of other areas of care across the whole organization, we have different kinds of staff. One of the things we're struggling with is what I was saying is we don't have a dedicated clinical volunteer coordinator. And if you're gonna get someone with credentials, trained, insured, scheduled, that's a whole other job just to get the people to do the job, right? So that's been one of the struggles, because people will pay me to do a visit for someone who's been shot. They won't pay me to get a volunteer coordinator, to get a social worker to come volunteer. It's tough, and that's where we need to, we're what? The organization has existed now for 6+ years, and the clinic has been around for 3.5. Proof of concept, right? We did it. A lot of people said the BRIC wasn't going to work, or that nobody would come, or that nobody would need it. It's completely exceeded all expectations. Now we're getting the data, now we're getting the stories, so we can make the argument so that we can grow, and that we can support others to gain capacity to do it as well. So, it's tricky, because when you think about transformation, yes, we want to provide the care, but what we really want? We want the hospital, the trauma centers to do it, right? Because that's the only actual sustainable answer, right? We can't take care of everybody, but we can change the standard of care everywhere. And that's what we're trying to do now. So sometimes I think my work is less to take care of everybody who's been shot, but more to prove that it's possible to take care of people in a different way with better outcomes, and then teach how to do that. And that's what the BRIC Institute project is about. Yeah. Other questions? Yes.
You're gonna hate me. First off, I'd like everybody to know that while this is extremely impressive, what's described to you, there's also another part of it called the T,
Yeah.
which is equally as impressive. And I was gonna ask you, Doctor, if you could, I don't know if you can, I'm not asking it to take a long time, if you could describe the T a little bit?
Yeah. So the
Just
T,
a little.
the T again is another clinical program, and the BRIC started inside the T. The T is currently, historically, it was a project to teach Stop the Bleed to the community, so that people could be first responders in the setting of a shooting. Then when the pandemic hit, we pivoted to COVID response and PPE and public education. So we started doing mobile outreach to get PPE out there, and as we did that, we started more and more engaging with people who were unhoused. At the same time, overdoses, right along with shootings, were skyrocketing. So we started doing work with people at risk for overdose who were often frequently unhoused as well. That was a project that started in, again, 2020, right along with the BRIC, and has now grown into a massive set of mobile outreach in 10 different locations every week, engaging with people at risk for overdose, largely who are unhoused or housing insecure, and a walk-in clinic where we're taking care of people who have wounds associated with, honestly, injection drug use, as well as malnutrition and environmental exposures. Just as many people are dying, if not more, from overdoses that could be prevented as are bullets. And again, like I said before, it's all trauma. Those programs actually are working more and more and more in concert together. Because like I said, someone will be shot and given opioids. 10 years later is the person on the street who's using fentanyl, real talk. And we could have done better all the way across. What's really beautiful is that in doing this engagement, we also are getting people into different kinds of treatment and care. And we're getting people that we met on the street doing the outreach for the T, who now go to the BRIC for holistic care like acupuncture and spiritual care and stuff. It's a 360 process. And the whole thing is about trauma. We say at the T, trauma is the real drug. And so we work together to really do everything we can to restore the humanity and respect and love persons, regardless of what the issue is. And Kevin's been, again, a huge part of our work at the T with a real heart for people who are housing insecure. Yes?
What's the origin of the name of the T?
So the T came from the symbol of, it's a T with a slash through it, and it's a symbol we made to symbolize a tourniquet. But it also is a slash like no more Trump. And so we named the building where we started our operations the T, just like on accident, and then it just became the name of the program. Yeah. And then the BRIC, obviously, we wanted something that didn't include stigmatizing language. Everyone's like, I'm just going to the BRIC. That's easy to say, it's no big deal. People like. And both of the programs, like I said, are underneath this larger nonprofit called Power for STL, which is based on the idea that people can heal themselves provided the knowledge and resources to express them. So that's what. Any other questions? Yes.
What's in the BRIC
I'll let you
box?
see it, but it's basically wound care supplies, pain stuff, and a few wellness things. We even have a stress ball of the globe, so you can say you got the whole world in here. So it's just little things and big things to say, here's some stuff to get you through the next few days. Call us, make an appointment. We give free rides. All the care is free. You can bring your family. You're welcome here. Just come on by. And in fact, we're getting ready. Our next big project, Kevin, as I talked to the ER social workers, is tea boxes. They want these with all of our tea wound care stuff. So that's how it is. Yes.
Along with that, you mentioned that the 15-year-old with the foot injury
Yes.
got the box
Right.
at the hospital.
Right. So the way we do it is we give our local trauma centers these boxes. We supply them. So we have found that if you just give somebody a phone number, they're like, I don't know you, I don't know, you know, but when you give them a gift, and it's beautiful and it's got stuff and it's resource, you start to unbreak the broken trust. And we find it to be an absolutely critical part of making that connection, that referral. But also, it's got supplies, so you can reduce your chance of infection, improve your pain, and not be so stressed out. So it's doing two things at once. So we're supplying these boxes to Barnes and to SLU and other community partners. We even did a pilot. I don't know if it worked so great, but we might try it again, where we did BRIC bags, which are little tiny mylar bags. They're not tiny, but like smaller mylar bags, and we put them on ambulances so that they can distribute them. Because some people don't come to the hospital. They're wounded particularly. But yeah.
How much does the box cost you?
So, depending on the version of the box, there's a few, yeah, there's like the really like low end, probably around a $50 box to up to a $125 box. It depends on what we put in it. And the box itself is covered in art by the local artist, Kababi Dayak, who's been a wonderful gift to us to create beauty to everything I pass on. So I actually have a couple things here as we end up. If you want to take some of the BRIC home with you, I brought you some BRIC cups. I brought you some BRIC pens. We call this white coat merch because it's got a stylus, a pen, and a flashlight. And then there's, I brought this for Arlene for being so great. You can get your own little baby BRIC box. Well, thank you so much. Again, I can answer any other questions. I appreciate the time. Yes.
Just real quick, maybe a little beyond, but what I'm learning is that, or I've heard, is that the mortality rate of gun injuries has really gone down because of the EMT and they're getting off the streets. They're not dying on the streets as much. They're getting to the ERs.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about that, or is that related at all, or can the paramedics get the bullets out before they get to the ER?
Well, I wish. The thing is, when you're getting somebody from the scene to the hospital, it's all about time.
Right.
You don't want to be getting into any kind of nuanced conversation because somebody might be talking to you and 10 minutes later they're dead, right? So it's just really, really important. And I do think trauma systems have revolutionized trauma outcomes, right? You can't, I mean, that's where I was trained. That's what, you know, but that revolution came about two decades ago and it's flattened out. Prevention is really where it's at now. And my argument is, how can you prevent something you're not caring for? So that's a big part.
I'm sorry, I missed the part that I forgot was that the police officers are now carrying these. So they don't even have to wait for the paramedics to get there. They're like stopping the bleeding before they. Is that happening?
Yes, in fact, we have trained numerous St. Louis police officers in how to apply tourniquets, and also police officers can give Narcan as well. The thing is, it depends on what the priorities are in the scene.
Right.
All of that is life-saving, absolutely essential, and shouldn't go anywhere. What we're saying is, what happens next?
Yeah, right.
And that's the part that I think the community is in position.
Okay.
So how can
Hi.
how
How are you?
How are you doing? Yeah.
Good.
How can those of us in the faith community help you? I mean,
Yeah.
we have I'm a missioner for recovery, and we have missioners for gun violence and things like that. And other than spreading the word, I mean, how can we help you?
Spiritual care is an immense part of the work that we do. We have chaplains that are in our different spaces, and I think community chaplaincy and volunteering is one massive way to help. That's a really, really big one. I think the other thing is to advocate for a rehumanizing language. And I think the last is to really pray for the region, because I argue that if nobody else ever got shot again, we have enough pain inside the bodies of our children to last a couple generations. So what is it going to take to undo that, right? That's deep spirit work. And so we have some community chaplains that work with us, and I think that's one of the most palpable ways. But we're hoping to create a few different opportunities through BRIC Institute, whether you're a journalist, social worker, a nurse, a doctor, chaplain, to learn more about bullet-related injury and bring these practices into play. We actually did a similar event just last week called T Academy, where we taught the best practices in harm reduction holistically. We're trying to get more and more and more people aware of what's possible in healing in general. So different opportunities. I say stay tuned. BRIC Institute might be really great for you. And if you're interested in becoming part of our community chaplains as well, that's another opportunity. Well, thank you again. I'm here. Appreciate it.